Emmett Till. So here's the context that I want to offer. My family has a complicated though impressive history. Impressive in, you know, in the sense that if you're an onlooker, then you'll see us on, you'll see my ancestors and my grandparents and my aunt on documentaries like Eyes on the Prize. You read about them. In the conversations of history where they talk about desegregating the South. My aunt's Carlotta Walls Lanier, she desegregated Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas. My grandfather drove those kids to and from school amidst paratroopers and screaming mobs. She's the recipient of the Congressional Medal of Honor. I come from activists and educators. I come from people who were impossibly proud. Grandparents who got college degrees in the Depression, black folk. Being mediocre was never an option for me, ever. The thought that college was optional never occurred to me. Like getting a master's degree was mandatory. You feel me? That's the context in which I was born. But it's a complicated, murky history. It really is. And for all of that impressive stuff, and for all of these sort of, you know, I come from this long line of overachievers, right? None of them ever, like their form of resistance never looked like stomping their feet, hissing at the oppressor, raising their voice, you know, rocking the boat that way. That's not what their resistance looked like. Their resistance looked like, I'm gonna do it anyway. You know, I'm gonna get my degree anyway. I'll get a master's degree because you say I can't. I'm gonna be large anyway. That was the resistance. But they were people who never actually showed up on the planet in anger. You understand what I'm saying? Ever. I'm 37 years old, yo, and I was a cut up. And I can't tell you right now what my mother looks like if she's angry. That's a trip, don't you think? Yeah. In 37 years? Yeah. I don't know what she looks like. Right. If she's angry, I don't know, because I've never seen it. I've seen her cry, you know? I've seen her dissolve into tears. I've seen her be broken. I've seen her be, you know, like apologetic. I've seen a lot. I've seen her renew herself. I ain't ever seen her be mad. That's deep. My grandfather, segregated South. Segregated Army, World War II. Never saw him show up in anger. Really? I'm giving you context because the stuff that I write, the way that I write, the voice that I use is mine because I really do feel like I'm all of my family's unsaid shit. I swear to God. That's how I feel. All the shit that they swallowed, all that bitterness, all that anger, all that rage, all that consternation, all that accusatory, I'm pointing the finger and calling you a liar to your face, telling you fuck you to your face. My family didn't live there, so I live there. I'm the product of all that silence. You understand what I'm getting at? So Emmett Till is a story that I heard as a little girl, wherein my mother, in 1955, in Mississippi, when this happened to this young man who was 14, who was visiting relatives in the Delta, who had not been properly schooled about the politic of Jim Crow, right? He coming from Chicago, he had a pretty chocolate reality, you know what I mean? And then he goes down south and he's popping his collar and he's saying all this slick shit and he's putting himself in danger and he doesn't even know it. He doesn't even know it because he's trying to be impressive. He got these southern backwoods cousins and he's trying to be impressive. And he's literally putting the noose around his neck. And so Emmett Till died, and he died horribly, yo. He died badly. And my mother was 8 years old when they wrote about it, and they had a picture of him, his mangled body, his unrecognizable face was on the cover of Jet magazine, and my grandmother left it on the coffee table for my mother to find. That's deep. what she couldn't tell her daughter, you know, I couldn't sit her down and say, yo, this is what they'll do. She just left the book. And my mother was terrified and terrorized, and safety died right there. She never knew it again, never felt safe again. If they'll do that to this young man, because he whistled at a white woman, my God. And she never knew safety again. I walked around my whole childhood, my whole adulthood with that story swirling about in my head, needing to give a voice to it, needing to reconcile it, because I did the exact same fucking thing to my son when I'm watching a documentary about Emmett Till. And he comes bopping in, you know, and he's all innocent and unaware and fully integrated. You know what I'm saying? What you watching? And I was like, oh hell, sit down. It was crazy. It was the craziest legacy ever, you know, like, okay, here, you gotta get terrorized this way too, sit down. So this poem is all of that stuff for me. It's the historical reckoning, but it's also my own personal reckoning. You know, it's the stuff that lives in my own family history. It's the stuff that hisses at us, you know, in my own family history. And I'm super, again, I'm honored to be here. I'm honored every time I get to do it, but it does take a lot from me, and it always fucks me up. I don't know when it's gonna ever get easier. So Emmett Till. Southern trees bear a strange fruit, blood on the leaves and blood at the root. Black bodies swing in the southern breeze. Strange fruit hang from the poplar tree. In this photo, he's laughing. And there's no cotton gin around his waist. He's not stretched into swollen limb. His eyes are still hazel and recognizable. Two neat white rows of perfect teeth sit totem-like in his mouth, and the world did not know him because he had not been murdered yet. He's still slipping into the kitchen to get another piece of cornbread while his mama ain't looking. He'll mash it with his fingers, drink some buttermilk, and laugh with his eyes, and they are still hazel and bright, like stars in uppercase. And ain't nobody gouged them out or shut them closed. And when he goes to school, he'll do a silly little dance with his arms and legs cocked out at odd angles, and his classmates are gonna laugh, and there will be no cotton gin round his waist. Pastoral scenes of the gallant South, the bulging eyes and the twisted mouth, scent of magnolia, sweet and fresh. Then the sudden smell of burning flesh. Now in this photo, he's proud of the hat on his head. You can see that by how straight his neck is, and his mama's in the picture, and they got the same face, and his head is high and perfect, and ain't no bullet in it, and there will be months before there is one, and in those months, he is his mama's child. The smug and overfed man-child all Southern ladies love to cook for, because he licks the plate clean even if it's leftovers. He just eats and yes ma'ams and makes you giggle so much you got to shoo him out the kitchen just so you can get the pots clean. And he's breathing. And ain't no men dressed like midnight with sunless, unlaughing eyes, snatching him out your door, changing everything when neither of you wanted to be anything other than laughing in the kitchen with the greens still simmering in the pot. Here is a fruit for the crows to pluck, for the rain to gather, for the wind to suck, for the sun to rot, for the trees to dry. Here is a strange and bitter crowd. This last photo is a Holocaust. The one history concretized into the nighttime musings of black children who hopscotched above and below Bible Belt, who saw a tattered otherworldly version of the 14-year-old Emmett head poised strangely above a sharp black suit on the cover of Jet magazine. There were no eyes, smiling, mischievous, man-child, wonderful cornbread and buttermilk, slick and fast-talking, looking like his mama, bubblegum, pop saunter, and sizzle, straight-necked, full of tomorrow's boy, staring back into the camera. What was there was not there at all. What was there swallowed the world. My mama was 8 years old when they painted Emmett Till's fractured image on the cover of a Negro magazine. 8 years old. Pigtails, knee socks, pinafores, pleats, and a heap of pretty girl possibilities. And I wonder, did my grandmother set that book down with intention on the coffee table, knowing her baby girl would see it and know what should not be known but what must be known? This is what the South does with an adolescent mistake. When a fast-talking, finger-snapping Negro from up north whistles and boasts about big city white girl honeys with rosy lips and no Jim Crow. It is an image I shoved at my 13-year-old son, frenetic in my attempt to tell him that this is black history. I need him to know that if he is not careful, not brave, not the sum total of all our unlit courage, if he relegates these stories to cliff notes, he will die and bleed out in the epilogue. I need you to know, Sally, that my arms will never be wide enough to cover sins like these, that your head held so high is still a cautionary tale, but to go on and do it anyway, son. Go on and do it anyway, even with your hoodie up, son. Do it anyway and laugh and dance with your arms and legs cocked out in odd angles and slip by me and get the extra cornbread whenever you can, and be grateful that when you and your boys say some slick shit about the pretty blonde girl in the front row of algebra, you are permitted that levity. After 400 years of midnight, necks decorated in nooses, plantations that dressed up terrorism in mint julep and white lace gloves, I tell my son to remember Emmett Till. Remember when his head was still high, when his eyes were still hazel, still smiling. Tell him that his mother loved him and almost could not recognize him when that last whistle
black for as long as we can be. Thank you very much for having me.